Hi guys, it's me, Marcy, and today we were going to be working on flowers, and I'm glad that you could join me, and maybe you're going to see this as a recorded event instead, but anyhow, I thought all of us together we might have a little bit of fun, and I love making flowers. Not the best, but I can show you some basic ways to work and get a few done. I'm here in my studio, and now I read somewhere a new name for us. Instead of sheltering at home or social distancing, I think we should call ourselves artists in residence. How does that sound? Makes it sound fancier than it really is, you know, running around and just hoping that this will be over soon. I'm so glad that you could join me. So what I'm going to do is reverse the phone so you can see some of the flowers that I've made, and we're going to talk about them just for a minute, and then I'm going to click my phone into the holder that's above my station, and then we're going to start making them. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves. Please say hi and where you're from so I know who's watching, and let's get to it. Let me reverse this, and you have to excuse me. I'm not the most technical person in the world, but I'll do my best. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, here's some of the flowers that I've recently made. I was playing with some of the new sim colors, and I made this. I was looking at blossoms, and one of the things I was doing was going for a little bit of translucency. They have some new, wonderful, somewhat translucent colors. Let me show you. I've got my sim box right here. So like this color, it's not white, it's not clear, it's just kind of, can you see it? I'm trying to find a good light for it. It's just kind of, it would make a really good cloud. So sometimes I use that behind maybe a transparent color that adds a little bit of opaqueness, but not too much. So that's a new one. This one in particular is called Cotton, but they had some other ones that I liked probably a little bit more, and I can add that later on. There were some great new pinks, and these pinks were some of the new sim colors also. So here's one, and I make it on the back of a bead, or on the top of a bead. This one I should have cleaned first, and then I build it off of the top there, and that's one of the things we're going to be doing. And this is another one. I was playing around with some stringers that I had to see how they would look as a flower. And I kind of like this too. A lot of these aren't specific flowers. And this one had a little bit too much silver in the glass from whatever glass I was playing with, and it changed the coloring a little bit, but I still like the translucency. I like seeing what I can do. These are sim colors, which I really like. This is Blueberry Muffin, and it's one of my new favorites. Can you see that? I'm trying to show you. It's a deep bluish purple that I put over other colors. It's quite dark, but it's really pretty. These are new sim colors also. Isn't that pink, that translucent pink, really pretty? Made it on the back of a green, and that's more new sim glass here. And I thought, well, I probably ought to try making an iris. The irises near my house should be blossoming, in another couple of weeks still. So that was one. Sometimes I like using up my old stringers, and most of the stringers that I have are encased, so that adding the clear over the other colors, and then when you smash it, makes it a little bit more translucent. This one I was playing with putting a bee on top of a flower, and I think that's really fun also. Hi, Kathy. So go ahead, tell me that you're watching, where you're from, stuff like that. So I wanted to show you those first, and I brought a couple of flowers in from our yard. We have dogwood blossoming, and I just love these flowers. We have quite a few trees of those, and then some little pink azaleas. This isn't my favorite color, but I really like the brightness, and you know, we can at least use a little something cheery. So anyhow, I brought those for inspiration. And I don't know whether you guys like to make things on the ends of wires. This is just a little, you know what this is, everything but the bagel spice. I don't know whether any of you have tried that from Trader Joe's. So I brought some of these that I make on the ends of wires, and little bunny and little bee and stuff like that. And they're always fun to make little arrangements out of, or to add and to make a little pin or add on a package or stuff like that. There's so many different things that you can do with those. So I am going to click you in now to, this is just under my hood, and my voice will be not quite as loud as it is right now because I'll be farther from my phone. I'll try and speak up the best I can. So we'll just adjust this phone here. It looks like you can see there's my hand, so I know you're going to be able to see, and it goes out to there. Okay, I think we can get this party started. Here we go. So I wanted to also show you some of my tools that I use for petals, because for me, part of the fun part of making petals is not keeping them straight and flat. I like them to have some movement of some sort. And of course, an easy way would be to use some sort of tweezers. These that don't stick are some of my favorites that you can really manipulate with them, or these skinny ones. But I'm afraid that where some people buy a bunch of rollers or other types of tools, I like to buy kind of a different style of tool. Well, first of all, a lot of you guys have these, the concave convex. These make wonderful petals, but look at this. See how it's concave and convex also, and when you smash it, you get a nice curve to it. I got these off of Etsy, and I don't think that shop is going right now. Mirror Stream, I believe, is where I got it. They were taking a break last time I saw them, and these are Mirror Stream also. But sometimes when you see an idea, you might find it somewhere else. See how that's concave and convex there to give you a cup. I would think if you could somehow attach 2 tiny spoons to a pair of pliers, that could do it also. One of the things I found with this is that I like them to be narrower on the end. So I really like this pair so that you can get in, because you've got your base and then you've got your glass coming out from it, and you need to get in there to smush. So if this is really wide, it's hard to get into where you want it to go. These make, I know you think shells and other things, but this style make a really fun pattern of the lines on petals, and then I take my pliers afterwards and curve them, and here they are in a smaller version. Hope you're able to see all of these and I'm not just waving them around. And then this one has concave convex plus the lines, so you can see there's a lot of usage on these also. I use them a lot. Okay, so now you've seen some of my tools, just because I think it's always fun to see what's out there and what might work for what your goals are, because we all have different goals when we're making things. I just need to put some of these away. It's not that I'm naturally that tidy, but it's easier to work if I know where everything is. Okay. So, you saw those, you saw these. These are really handy and inexpensive, and I highly suggest, if this were a piece of glass coming out, you have your skinny petal this way that you can make concave, but sometimes I'll very gently do 1 and then 2, and it spreads out your glass a little bit more also. I know people love to demo using their fingers pretending they're glass, so let's melt some glass. I thought we would do a dogwood today, just because one's here, we can look at it together. And I love dogwood. So I hope you can see this. I'm going to go above the flame. You can see the 4 petals. See where they're indented and a tiny bit darker. And this also has lines that are quite visible. I always look to see what are the main things that show up on something. So even if it's not perfect, if you get a couple of the things that gives our eyes the idea that this is what that is, kind of the idea of it, it helps. And then it's got this little center, this kind of yellow-green center of essentially raised dots. Isn't that it? So, and these, see the shape of these petals? They're kind of long. You've got 2 on the bottom and then 2 that come over the top. You don't have to do it that way. You just want to be sure that you have something that's sticking out. And these are kind of like long hearts in a way, if you want to think of them that way too. They kind of look like that. Now, I personally am not one of the ones who usually makes petals separate and then attaches them. I like the challenge of making it all at the same time. So what I want to do is I want to start with, I need that green center first. So I have some pea green and some sage, although there are a lot of other glasses that will work well with it. I'm just going to do a quick case of this, and let's do our prep work first. And you know, looking at the dogwood, it's not exactly white, and it's not exactly ivory. So I think I'd rather go to the white side of it as opposed to the ivory side of it, or say the heck with it and let's make a pink one. What do you guys think? Does anybody have a preference? I'm asking this and I can't see your comments. So I'm going to decide after I pull this center and hope that I'm doing what you were guessing, me guessing what I thought you wanted. Okay, so I just cased it with a little bit of green sage, the transparent green one, which I love this green. It kind of tones down the other stuff and makes things look a little more natural. And I'm just melting it all together, and then I'm going to let it cool, and I wait and wait, and I'm watching the color change before I pull. And I saw that it got a little bit darker, and then I pull. That's more than enough, okay? And it's nice and firm at this point, so I will flame cut it there. And then I will break off the piece at the end here. And we'll let that cool because we don't need that right away. But I need a base, and I'm thinking that I might just go ahead and use this sage for the base. Now what I do is I do a base bead and then flatten it a little bit and then build off of that. And that way it raises it a tiny bit off of the mandrel so that when I am smushing the petals, I have a little bit more room to work with, because if it's too close, I don't know about you, but it seems to want to land on the mandrel instead of staying away from it. It's like it gravitates towards it. So feel free to ask questions, and as you know, I can't see them right now, but after I'm done, I'm going to go back to the live broadcast and I'm going to save it to my page, and then I'll go through the comments and answer any questions that I can, or find out answers, or whatever we need to do to get any questions answered. And also, if you have an idea for next Thursday of something you'd like me to do, it's got to be something I don't teach in classes, because I think it's more fair that way if I don't do what I teach already. But if you can come up with something you'd like to see, please go ahead and put it into the comments, and I'll look at them and figure out something. I've been wondering about a class on seashells. I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of dreaming about going somewhere because we can't. I'm thinking I just love the ocean and the beach, and it might be fun, and I've got lots of samples. And I have to watch the length of these, because last time, excuse me, my phone got too warm sitting above the flame. The heat rises, and it just rose right into my phone, and it stopped it. So if you see this end prematurely, you know what happened, that my phone got too hot. So while I'm making the base here, I thought I would also mention to you that the ISGB is hosting some classes. You can go to the ISGB page, some demos, and watch them there in that group, and that's for free. And they're having a silent auction also, and they've got links to that on the ISGB page, and everybody is invited to bid on that. And there's some really cool things, and a lot of glass beads and art and things related, and some things that aren't related. So it would be lovely if you supported my wonderful group of the ISGB, International Society of Glass Bead Makers. And on Saturday, we're having an online bead bazaar. And so artists are hosting either, you know, on their own page, in their Etsy shop, somewhere, everybody's hosting their own beads, and you can find out where they are on the ISGB page. But I'll tell you, I'm going to be having some sales in my private group, Glass Art and Beads by Marcy Lamberson, and I will put a link to that at the end of this also, and the time in which I'll be posting some of my beads and stuff, but I'll be selling that day too. Okay, so we've got a center here, and we aren't going to do the little extra dots until later, but I needed it a little bit larger so I could attach the petals. The other thing I thought was, well, there are 4 petals, so why don't I do them, I'm going to do this on a little bit of a diagonal, and then that way I won't get close to the mandrel on 2 of them. I think that will make it easier. So I have my effitre white right here, and let's get that started. And what I'm going to do is, see, here's the very bottom. I'm going to build in this top corner. I'm going to build a large, it's almost like a large dot, and we're just going to build it out larger and larger and larger. And let's look for a second the shape of that petal. See that? So it's skinnier close in and it's wider as it goes out. So I'm going to need to make it a little bit wider as we go out. I hope you can see that. I'm going to raise it up here just for a sec to be sure. Okay. So we've got that to look at for inspiration. We're going to the top corner of the sage green. We've flattened it on the back. It's rounded on the front. And we're going to cover up some of the green with the petal. And this is one of my tricks, you guys. I always like to do the hardest stuff first. Now I know some people go, hey, let's practice with the easier stuff, but I do the farther away stuff. So the reason why, of course there's a reason, I'm so logical, you know. The reason why is because once I get that one done, the farther away one that's harder, because I'm a lefty, it's easier to do this side than that side, then it's easier to even things up on this side where I'm a little bit more coordinated. So if I do the hardest side first, the other side is easier for me to even out and make similar. And I'm going to come in a little ways because see how the bottom ones are underneath the top ones? So we're going to start in just a little bit closer. I'm getting a gather on the end of my rod of white glass. And I'm heating up my glass, especially where the dot's going to go. I let it cool just a minute, and then I touch down and pull out, and I'm letting it cool a tiny bit. If I turn it upside down, all the white will not go to the bottom, although plenty will. But it's kind of letting gravity help me out a little bit. So this is going to be a long petal. We're going to heat the green while the white cools a bit. And we're going to add, remember how it got wider at the very end? We're going to add, they call it a little rainbow over the very end to make this wider. See how that adds width to it right there? So if this is kind of weird for you before we start smushing it, one of the things you can do is gently press it a little bit with your regular mashers, and that will kind of keep things in line for you. But we've got that. So I want to make it a little bit more translucent. You guys figured out how to make it more translucent? I kind of alluded to it already. Yep, we add some clear. And let me just do the bead maker cleaning. I think many of you can picture what that is. And what I'm going to do is I am going to add a little bit of clear over the top. When you add clear with an opaque, it makes it just a little less opaque once you smush it together. So I'm adding a good dollop of clear over the top. Doesn't have to reach the very bottom because we're going to be covering that with another petal, right? Just want to be be sure there's plenty of clear on there. And I just did it on the top. If you wanted it super translucent, I would add it all the way around. So I'm going to heat that in so that it blends with the white a little bit. And I'm watching how floppy it's getting, and I think that, you know, I showed you so many different ones that I could use. Let me see whether I've got the ones I want. I didn't leave them out. You know, I don't know where they are. Hang on just a sec, I'm looking. Well, I don't see them, so we're going to get another tool out. I have this one that has some little straight lines in it. We'll use that one, although I was looking for my longer one with all the lines. But I think I just heard it hit the floor. So we're going to just go with Plan B here. So I'm heating the back side of everything, the green base, the white and transparent clear petal, petal number 1. And it's going to look a little convoluted when I press it. See, it's kind of turned on an odd angle, but I want to get the lines in there right. And I want them on an angle. So there we go. We can fix it a little bit more later on, but it's essentially where we want it. Eventually, I think we might move it a little bit over. There we go. Okay, so see where the clear and the white went together? We got some of the lines in, we got some of the translucency in. Not bad. We're going to do another one just like it coming in this direction opposite from it. And this one's going to go a little faster. Now my biggest problem is, am I going to be able to match the size of the first one, because I should have paid a little bit more attention. Too busy talking to you. So we're keeping what's on there warm. And we're heating up some white. And we're not letting the petal or the green base get too hot. And here we go. Press down. Turn it upside down so that the gravity keeps the white skinnier at the base and wider at the top. Let it cool a tiny bit, and we're watching the color here. And this one isn't as wide as the last one, so we're going to add a little more glass after that cools. But while that's cooling, we're going to keep the rest of it warm. We're going to heat up the existing petal. Remember, that petal is a little bit fragile because you've smushed it already. And this cooled, we can tell by the color of the glass, it's totally opaque and not translucent. And we're just going to add a little bit extra along the sides, so that kind of rainbow thing that I did before is a little bit longer to add some of the width to it. And don't forget that after you add the clear and you smush it, it will be longer. So if it starts out shorter than the other side, not a bad thing. So let's keep this warm, the green warm, while the white was cooling, so we can add a little bit of transparent. Kind of funny looking, isn't it? So are you guys reading good books, doing anything fun? I haven't been quite as focused as I wish I would normally be. You know, it's been a little bit harder. And my husband's home, and let me tell you, that's new because he's always been working so much. It's almost like we're practicing for retirement a little bit early. I think we can do it too when the time comes now. That's kind of one of the good sides out of this. Okay, so before I smush it, I'm heating up my existing petal, my green base, and then I'm going to heat back up the new petal. And I'm careful not to hold it upside down too much, because then it would just stretch and get skinnier. And we don't want it skinnier, we want to keep it broad. So underneath, pick the direction where I want it to go, give it a little smush. Yeah, that's pretty good. This one has a little extra white on this side that's still a little thick. I can come back to here and thin this out a little bit too. And that widens it also. So now we've got about the width that we want. We got 2 more petals to go, and these overlap on top of these a bit. So we're going to put them right here, go over the top. And they're going to be just as long also. You can see where you can see the straight lines in it, like on the petals. And we haven't done the indentation at the very end. We'll do that more towards the end of the flower. So I use some of these on these rings. Can you see my dragon ring that I'm wearing? The base is made by my friend Lisa Liddy, and then I make the beads that go inside of them. I think they're so much fun, and I make all kinds of interchangeable beads. And I'll have a couple of those available too, I think, on Saturday during my quick show in Glass Art and Beads by Marcy Lamberson. Another plug. You have to join the group, but that's easy. Okay, dot upside down to let gravity handle some of it. And I'm watching the color. And while I'm watching, I can heat up these existing petals a little bit that I've already smushed. This is still pretty soupy. I love white effitre. It is just mushy as anything, but boy, you have to hang on to it and show it who's boss, because it sure tends to want to do its own thing if you aren't careful with the temperatures. Okay, so we're warming up the existing things while the other white petal is cooling a tiny bit. I can tell we're going to need to add a little bit of length to it also. Let's give it a little rainbow on the end. And there's quite a bit of glass right in this area, so that will smush longer. And we're going to keep everything else nice and warm and away from the mandrel. So don't forget, think about gravity and where you want your glass to go, what direction and stuff. If it's super soupy, sometimes I'll hold on to it with one of my glass rods while it cools a little bit, or I'll rotate it watching where the gravity is taking it. And I'm heating up a little clear to go over the top to make it more translucent, and let's swipe that on. Sometimes if you don't have quite enough white glass, you can just add a little extra transparent clear also, and that will help stretch it also. A little more, and let's see, a little bit on this side. Cool. That's headed in the wrong direction. Over here, please. Okay, we'll heat up everything else, and then we'll look to see how we're doing. And first, keep everything warm. More important than smushing something, even though smushing seems like a lot more fun. Make sure you got your priorities right. I'm heating from behind, heating from the front, and I'm watching because that's soupy. Where it's going, I'm going to catch it on the back and wiggle it over to where I need it to go. And I'm squishing once. I could squish a little bit more too. And I'm lifting it up a tiny bit too, away from the mandrel at the same time. Okay, we've got 3 petals, and let's get a 4th. This should get faster now, shouldn't it? But these are thin, so you've got to keep them warm, so you're heating things up more often than you normally would. And you've got to be careful not to warm them up too much, or they're going to start flopping around. If they're flopping around, you can stop them with a tool on your marber, something like that, and take care of business. Okay, so they're staying warm while I'm pre-melting some of my white glass. And you don't want to melt the fronts too much, because if you do, you're going to lose some of your line. So sometimes heating from the back is a good way to do it. I'm going to heat where I'm adding my glass. Touch down, pull out, think gravity, and hold it. I'm holding it downwards and letting it cool. Once it cools, then I can detach and then add however much glass I need. So now I'm flame cutting it from that gather. And in the interim, I'm going to go back and warm up all of my petals again. I know, it seems like it's always, you're always doing it, but it's smarter. Doesn't that look like it ought to be the top of an orchid or something? You can see where you can take this with different petals and more of them or whatever. So I added a little more to the top, and while that's cooling a bit before I add the transparent clear, I'm going to heat up the rest of the bead. Are you tired of me saying that yet? You do a lot of heating in sculpture, don't you? So don't forget to write down ideas for next week of what you would like to see. And tell me who you are and where you're from. And ask questions. I'll answer them when we're done. I'm adding the transparent clear like from before. And that was kind of wiggling around, so I needed my white to cool just a tiny bit before I added some more of the clear. And let's go back here and add a little bit more down here also. Oh, we're close. So go back, heat up everything else. And I want you to be very deliberate. I use that word a lot. Sometimes people look around and they think about all kinds of other things instead of being very deliberate where their flame is going and their heat is going. So I want you to think very deliberately of where that heat's going and watch what color your glass is at different stages, because that's going to give you all the clues that you need for your heat control. Okay, number 4. Get in there and squish. Squish a little more, a little more. I'd say that works. If we want it a little longer, then you just pull on it while it's still warm. Kind of cool, huh? So we're going to put the center over the top. If it's not perfect, no worries. You're going to cover that anyhow. But it's raised a little bit more than I'd like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push down a little bit here that will define the center, and that pushes this petal down a little bit more too. Let's heat up everything, keep it warm. Do we need to adjust anything? Now is the time to do it. See how I just heated right where I wanted it to move, way down low. And see how these are attached here? If I don't want them attached, I would just take a pair of shears and go in and snip it right there. I'd heat up just that area, not all the other stuff, just that area, and very carefully heat and gently snip. I think we're fine there. So we need to make an indentation. Remember how these go like that? And I don't think I'm going to add that little touch of brownish green. Yeah, no need to, but I am going to do the indentation. So on each one, there are a couple of ways that you can do it. A lot of you have pokey tools, and that would make an indentation. A mandrel would make an indentation. The edge of some nasty old pliers, and those might even leave a little residue of that greenish brown too. Just whatever you feel comfortable with. Find the width that you want and then use it. So let's try it and see. Okay, but first we're going to go back and we're going to heat everything up and make sure that it's nice and toasty warm. And don't forget, one of my ways of telling whether it's warm enough is whether it gets a glow to it immediately when you put the flame on it. If it doesn't, it means that it needs more heat. But when you see a glow right away, then you know that it's holding the heat and that it's probably warm enough. So let's get that glow in everywhere, but not too much. And see how I can just take my brass tool and move stuff around? It's kind of fun being the boss of it. So I'm heating just the very end of it, and then I'm going to take the round part and gently push in a little bit. See how that creates the little indentation here? You don't need to get too fancy. Now I see that it's raised up a little bit, and normally I would push it down. So if I don't get it the way I want it, I think we can just push it down there and it's fine. Okay, so let's do another one. Heat just the end and push in. You want a little bit more, so we're going to do it again. We'll only go in as far as you heat. So let's go back and heat up every single thing before we do the last 2 petals. Get plenty of heat in there. I bet you guys can do this too. And once you make one, I'd love for you to message me or send me a photo or post it on my timeline even. I would love to see how you do with it. I'm pushing in and making that little indentation. Let's do the final one. Push in and make the little indentation. So we've got our indentations. All we really need now is the center section. And it comes up kind of rounded and different heights. So what I'm going to do is start in the center and work my way around. This is easy. We're just doing raised dots. Doesn't need to be perfect. The ones on the flower aren't. So I'm starting in the center, push down, pull up, let it cool a little bit, flame cut. Heat up the backs of your petals. This is going to take a little bit of time to do, but boy, it's worth it having your petals just right. Ready? Here we go again. Push down, pull up, because, whoops, well, that made it a little bit different, didn't it? So it broke. We're going to need to flame cut it. I'm going to flame cut it upside down. We can fix it. Okay, heat up your petals though. In between, heat up the petals. Heat up the base. More petals. Make sure you get every petal all over. Do backs first and then a little bit at least on the front. All over. Okay. So let's try this again. Push down, pull up, and that one broke too. Oh, this is fun. Now you get to see how patient I am. What I'm doing is pushing the broken part towards the flame, heating it, and then I'm coming back and flame cutting it, and then letting it sink down again. When I push it up and it's hot, it will sink back down. So let's heat up the petals. Oh, so much excitement all at once, I know. Heat up the backs. So are we betting whether that happens again? I do it quickly enough before, oh yay, we got one. I want to hear applause. Pull up, let it sink back down, heat up the backs of the petals. We got away with doing 2, but we were fast before we had to reheat again. But it's worth it, you guys. It's worth it to take the time. Push down, pull up, flame cut, let it sink back in, reheat, 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 reheat. Are you writing down what you want me to do next week? You can put more flowers too if you're into flowers. We could do daffodils or roses or pansies or something. And we're just going around and we're adding our dots and letting them sink back down again while we're reheating these petals. Such a glamorous job, all this reheating. But see, we're getting close on this. We're going to add just a few more and then we're done. Coolio, huh? I got 2 before I came back to reheat my petals. You see that? It's kind of fun. We'll add a few more. There's room. Push down, pull up, flame cut. So when you have this flat back on it, they also are fun if you're doing really fancy gaudy rings. Sometimes I'll adhere these to the base of a ring And those are kind of fun. They make my dragon look tiny in comparison. You could do this on a smaller scale too, and that would be nice. Let's heat up these petals again. So it's possible with all the reheating that you might lose some of your veins, the straight lines. You can always go back in and add them again if you need to. Let's see, we're going to add a little bit here. We're going to even this up a tiny bit. And this is too straight across there. I want to add something coming out a little bit so it doesn't look quite so straight. And I think we're about there. How's that? I think that's good for a quick and easy dogwood. And I hope the rest of your day goes well, and please come back next Thursday if we're still being artists in residence. Come back Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll figure out. I'll announce on my personal page again what we're going to make after I see your suggestions. This one looks a little bit melted in. Let's give this just a quick extra something. I didn't heat it enough and nothing was happening. Try it again. Okay, and if you want, let's see, these bend a little bit. I guess I'm gonna futz with it. Now, the more you do that kind of thing, mess with it afterwards, the more chance you have of it breaking. I'm not kidding. So decide carefully if it's worth it to you. I just have a hard time when things are straight. I want to see a little bit of movement in things. So I like to see a little bit of curves and stuff going on. Let's add a little curve here. I tend to curve up more than curve down. I don't know whether it makes it look optimistic to me or what. Just a little bit of movement. I think movement's really nice in any class. Make sure we're keeping everything warm. Okay, now I'm happy with it. Thank you for joining me. So kind of you to be here and spend part of your day with me. Here's our bead. Here's the back side and the front. And I hope I'll see you next week. Come join the fun again. Take care. Thanks for popping by. See you Thursday. Bye.